Right, we're live and it's almost half past midnight, so I'm going to make this a relatively short video. As you may have guessed, I'm just going to speak a little bit about the September 11th anniversary, the anniversary of the 9/11 massacre, which took place in downtown Manhattan and Washington, D.C., and of course, Shanksville, Pennsylvania, which was a flight intended for Capitol Hill, but was diverted by some very courageous passengers who decided to take it upon themselves to save some lives while they still had the opportunity. There's actually a really good film called United 93. Hey, Alejandro, which is sort of a chronicle of what happened on that flight. Uh, I'm trying to remember if it, but it shows the hijackers. One of whom was from Lebanon, and it focuses on him. It shows them plotting and basically begins with them entering through very porous airport security at Logan Airport, and then eventually taking over the plane and being stopped by the passengers who had been taken hostage. It's actually a really good film and probably one of the best films about not September 11th that I've seen. There's another very good film starring Nicholas Cage where he portrays one of the Port Authority officers trapped beneath the rubble of the World Trade Center, who manages to be rescued after it has collapsed. It's I don't know. It's difficult to talk about, especially all these years later. It's kind of astonishing to think that it's been nearly 20 years ago since this has happened, and to think of everything that's happened in the interim. Even personally, I've had so many relatives that have passed away, and even a really good friend who uh, who was passed, and so many things have changed, and yet so many things have remained static. It's kind of interesting. One of the takeaways beyond the horror and panic and the general sense of uncertainty which prevailed for several months. And I know I can't speak for everyone, but for at least as someone who's a native multi-generational New Yorker, it's something that I never it's something that in a way I wasn't prepared for, even though there had been previous jihadist plots, some of which would have been or could have been just as devastating. I mean, the template for this was the failed 1993 World Trade Center bombing, which was engineered by Ramzi Youssef, and what was essentially the precursor to Al Qaeda. Um, Even though Al Qaeda existed at the time, these were sort of loosely affiliated jihadists. One of whom was, Youssef was the nephew, I believe, of Khalid Sheikh Mohammed, who engineered the 9/11, attacks. So that was the first major, um, that was the first significant Islamist uh, devastating Islamist attack on U.S. soil. Hey, Lisa, good to see you. And because it wasn't successful, people sort of overlooked it. They ignored it, particularly the FBI. And there's some great books about the FBI's negligence, not only with respect to the 9/11 attack, but all of the plots leading up to it and their subsequent cover up. There was an agent in uh, Ali. He was a triple agent called Ali Mohammed. He was in the Egyptian army, I believe, and also he managed to inveigle his way into the American Special Forces. He's a really interesting figure in the evolution of jihadism, and he's a person that we honestly don't know much about his whereabouts even today. He's hiding somewhere, but the government won't disclose where. Presumably, he's a cooperating informant, but we don't know. Um, yeah, I was a little bit older. I was in college at the time, and I actually saw the plane. I think the second plane crashing into the building, which is when most people realized that there was something that was non-accidental occurring. That this wasn't just a really tragic accident. And I went not that day, obviously, but I think a few days later, I went to college, Brooklyn College, where I was attending at the time. And one of the things, hey David, one of the in retrospect, and this was only, I mean, it really uh, impacted it made an impression at the time, but I didn't realize the significance of it until if years had elapsed and I saw what had happened to academia, because I'm kind I guess because I come from a generation that still retains some of the vestiges of a previous era, sort of consensus era in American culture. I had never really experienced up until that point. I think I was a junior in college. I never really experienced the ideologization of the academic world. I mean, I probably was aware of left wing professors, and I had probably encountered them in the past. Even in high school, there probably were liberal teachers, but it really I didn't really sense that I was being propagandized, even though public education in general, and John Taylor Gatto, the late John Taylor Gatto, has written a lot of great essays about this. Public education in general, from the outset, was designed to manipulate and mold a certain type of citizen. But even so, even in my generation, there was still a pretense of educating people in order to function in society. I don't think it was as readily apparent that you were just being brainwashed. And after 9/11, the next time I went back to my college, I got that sense. And you saw this develop for the remainder of my time there, even up to the point where I graduated. There was a campaign and this was directly related to 9/11, the aftermath of 9/11 on campus. There was a campaign to fire Casey Johnson, who, for those of you who aren't aware, he is a very respected scholar and American historian. I took one American history, a very good, albeit dense American history class with him. I think this was my senior year of college, but Casey Johnson is an incredibly respected historian. He's one of these guys. I think he was a tenure track professor by the time he was in his mid 20s. He had already published books. He was involved, I think, in uh, in the project to transcribe LBJ's tapes, presidential tapes. Um, he was also a, um, I believe he was a track announcer at Churchill Downs or something. I forget. He was he's kind of an eccentric, eclectic person, even though his politics are um, very middle of the road. He's sort of a center. He's sort of a centrist Democrat. I mean, he voted for Obama, but he is not a radical social justice warrior. Uh, and he gained fame nationally, at least, for co-authoring a book with Stuart Taylor Jr. about the Duke lacrosse hoax. So he also wrote a blog called Durham in Wonderland. So that's what put him in the sights of the social justice warriors. The fact that he wrote a book definitively proving that this had been a complete hoax, while academia wanted to lynch the Duke lacrosse players. But even before that, he had been in their sights to a certain extent. And I was aware of it because I was on campus at the time when he was a professor, and I believe he's still a professor at Brooklyn College. I could be wrong, but he's much more known now as a pundit, writing about abuses of Title IX and other other just social injustices. But he was targeted by the Middle Eastern Studies Department and the tenured Marxists in my college. Uh, and they tried to deny him tenure, and they failed miserably. He actually employed a lawyer. He had contacts in the media. He was basically able to completely obliterate the cabal that had gone after him, which was an unusual result, um, for those of you who follow campus politics. So it was very satisfying, but it brought to my attention this fact. Even though I was aware of, by that point, I was aware of the left wing, the kind of hardcore left and anti American nature of large parts of academia. This really focused in my mind with this particular incident when I went to campus and I saw people who were essentially very equivocal about something that was the greatest tragedy in modern American history, and that had left thousands of people in their own city bereaved. So that's that's what I took away. Not I was already well aware of Islam dating back to the 93 bombing. That's when I probably became aware of it, because up to that point I had been largely ignorant of Islam, even though my best friend in elementary school was a little boy named Faisal, who was obviously, his family was Muslim, even though I wasn't aware of it at the time, and didn't really think about it until many years later as an adult. Um, but I became aware of Islam as a political force and ideology after basically with the 93 bombing, when I went home and I couldn't watch TV because all of the TV broadcasting station antenna were located at the World Trade Center. And this is one of the reasons when the 2011 attack happened, the only station that was really broadcasting in terms of network TV was CBS, because I think they had their transmitter located in the Empire State Building. Um, so yeah, so that was one of the main takeaways in terms of long-term um, realizations. That aspect of it. I am actually going to do a video. I am going to do a video sometime soon about another aspect of Islam, which is unrelated to 9/11. But I just thought I would make this short video acknowledging something that had such a transformative impact, not just on the city, but in the nation and obviously the globe as well. Anyway, I will see all of you tomorrow. Thanks, Nate, Diane, Lisa, all of the Alejandro, all the great mods, and I'll talk to you later. Good night.